we started a community garden here. The students started plants indoors, and we came outside and we planted them for the community to enjoy. Well, as I look at it now, it is a mess, overgrown with weeds and plants. So we are going to today clean it up. We're going to weed it, but we want to also make sure we're social distancing. So as we continue, I want to introduce my friends.
Hi friends, I'm Mrs. Ketty.
I'm Anna.
We got I'm Miss Norm.
Miss Murph.
I'm Kira.
All right, so watch as we clean up our garden.
Hi, I'm here to share the materials we're going to use today in today's gardening session. We have our garbage bag and our bucket for all of our weeds. We've got our spade and our rake to help us weed through all of that, a watering can, and our cold weather plants. If you garden, make sure you have these items.
When weeding, you want to take it out and shake the dirt off.
So if you don't have a garden, there are ways you can still plant things. At home, you probably have some type of a container like this, like some type of Tupperware. You probably have one of these. It's a 5-gallon drum. Or you could have a can. And if you get your soil, you can plant it there, and you can grow things from here. You don't need this.
All right, so when you're planting your plants, you want to make sure that you're spacing them far enough apart and they're not too close. So what you do is you just take them and just set them out to make sure that the distance is good before you actually do the planting. All right, so we've cleaned out the garden, and now I'm going to show you how to plant a broccoli plant. Broccoli likes the cold weather, so it's okay to start planting them in March when the soil is still cold. So the first thing you want to do is find a place in your bed and dig a hole. Take your plant out of the container. You can break up those roots to get them moving again. And then you're just going to cover it with soil. Just like that. So that's broccoli, and that's how you plant a plant.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Ketty. I'm a teacher at Orchard STEM School. One of my favorite hobbies is gardening. Sometimes I have trouble remembering, is this a primrose? Is that an astilbe? A hosta? To help me keep track of all my plants in the garden, one thing I like to do is make a plant marker. Come on inside, let's get started. Hi everyone! If you're new to gardening, one tip that I have for you is to label all of the plants that you put into your garden, whether they be flowers or vegetables. That way, especially as a new gardener, you're able to easily identify and remember what plants you have planted. One easy way to do that with materials you probably have outside in your backyard or the neighborhood is with a rock. So using your rock, and a flat, smooth rock will work best so you can paint it right on the surface. Make sure you lay down some type of junk mail, scrap paper, newspaper, cardboard to protect the surface that you're working on. I'm going to pick pink, my favorite color, to use as my garden marker. Put a little dab on my plate and get started on covering the surface of my rock with paint. After some time has passed and you have tested with your fingers that no paint comes off when you touch your rock, it's time to begin labeling or writing on your rock to label your plant. I am going to be labeling this rock here with the plant name oregano. Oregano, which I'm holding here in my hand, this came from my garden out in the backyard, is an herb that is commonly found in spaghetti sauce. So it's one that my family enjoys and uses quite often. All right, I will begin writing the name of my herb, oregano, on my rock. And here is my oregano.
All right, everyone. We've been doing some outside gardening, so now let's bring it inside. And I thought I'd do a craft that's related to that. So here's this little guy. He's kind of like a chia pet, where I'm growing grass, and that's his hair. So I'm going to show you how to make him, and he's pretty easy. And we have some things around the house. So our materials, we need a stocking or a thin sock. We need some grass seed, a jar. And this is just a reused jar. I think it had some jam in it. I need some scissors, some plastic wrap, googly eyes and yarn for the face, my soil and a spoon, some water, and my hot glue gun. And then I also have a newspaper down to contain my mess. I have a couple of small rubber bands that I'm going to use for the ears, but that's optional. So let's get started. I'm going to take my stocking and I'm going to fill the bottom of it with my grass seed. So let me take some and sprinkle it in, because remember, the bottom of the stocking is going to be the top up here. Now I'm going to add some soil. And a little bit more. You can add as much as you want or as little as you want. It's up to you. It just depends on the size of the grass head that you want. So once you get that, then I'm going to just tie that off. So that way the soil doesn't leak out. Okay? And I'm going to cut the stocking a little bit, because I want the tail of that to fit right in there, so that way it will absorb the water that I put in there. Okay, now let's make some ears for this little guy. So what you do is you just pinch off on the side a little bit, and then take your rubber band and wrap it around. And then do the other side too. There's mine. Now I'm going to take some water and I'm going to pour it in here. Just about that much. I'm going to put a little hole in my plastic wrap. Maybe not. And put my plastic wrap around there. Now this little tail goes inside. You want the tail of your grass head to go into the water, because that's how it's going to keep the soil damp, and then your grass will grow. Now, you don't have to right now at this time decorate the face. I waited a few days just to make sure everything was settled. I didn't want to put some hot glue on there yet. But then what you do is you take your yarn, you cut it, glue it on as a smiley face. You glue on the eyes. And then I had an old pair of earrings I put on there. You can glue on anything that you'd like. Okay? So hopefully you have some of these materials lying around your house, and you get to make one also.
Another easy tip for gardening is regeneration. If you take a look at what I'm holding here, what's sitting in this water, does anybody know what vegetable this is? You got celery, you're right. An easy way to start a garden is by taking clippings from a vegetable that you already have. So after you've purchased your celery from the grocery store and an adult or someone has used the knife to cut off the celery that you have eaten, you can put it in a little jar filled up with some water, and if you look in real close, you'll see that a new plant is starting to form. We'll be able to plant this in our garden. Here is another example of regeneration. This one is a little easier to guess. Carrots, you got it. If you look closely, you'll see some green shoots beginning to form here. Again, this is growing a new plant from the scraps of the old plant. An awesome way to start your garden.
Have you ever heard the hacks that are on Facebook? Well, I've always been interested to see if they're true. Will they work? So what I did was I took a banana and I cut the ends off of it and I split it, and you see I have my pepper seedling. I'm going to stick my pepper seedling in, and hopefully it'll stand up in the banana. And then I've pre-put some soil in this pot. I'm going to place my banana there with my seedling and then cover it with some extra dirt. Now they say that because a banana is filled with potassium, that it will help the plant grow. So I've always wanted to try and see if this hack is legit. So if you have a banana at home and your mother or father, someone's growing plants and they'll give you a little seedling, you might want to try this and see if it works. Another thing I thought of is if you don't have a seedling, but you go to the store and you purchase one of those little packets of seeds, try it with some seeds and see if that works. So once you get it in, the banana's buried underneath, all the potassium's going through the soil, keep it watered, and let's see the growth. Now for another hack. If you have garlic cloves at home, a way to grow them without continually going to the grocery store to buy new ones is take a clove of garlic, take a jar, or this is just a cup, a glass that I had at home. Take either toothpicks or chopsticks or something that you can use to prop the garlic up. Fill your jar or glass with water. Take the toothpick or the chopstick. I actually found an opening in between a clove that I could prop it up on. Put it in the glass of water, and as you can see, I'm starting to get roots. Once the roots get a little bit longer, I'm going to take this and then plant it in soil and continue to water it, and I'll have beautiful garlic for all my pasta sauces, my pizza, and I won't have to continually go to the grocery store to buy new garlic. Final hack. Get yourself a pot, some potting soil. Hopefully you have a tea bag at home. And again, now I've got a little sprig, a little seedling of basil. I'm going to take some scissors. If you're a little nervous of doing this, have mom, dad help you out. All you do is you make a little slit in the tea bag. The paper is real thin. It's real easy to make a slit in. Take your tea bag, put it in the dirt, take your seedling, and carefully stick it in the slit. Take your dirt, I'm going to use my fingers, and cover the tea bag. Now I'm wondering the same thing you are, just like we did with our banana, do we need to use a seedling, or if we got a packet of seeds, could we put it in the tea bag? Because like the banana, the tea bag supplies nitrogen to the plant. And I would like to see if the tea bag or the banana makes your plant grow taller and faster. Hi, my name is Kitty Merck. I'm a 6th grade teacher at Orchard STEM. Last week in my virtual classroom, my 6th graders worked with different types of poetry. I asked them if they'd like to be a part of our gardening project, and 3 of them volunteered. You're about to hear and see 3 of their projects. One of them is an acrostic poem, one of them is a shape poem, and one of them is a haiku. We hope you enjoy.
Garden by Michaela Williams. Grows flowers, amazingly red roses, delightful smells, excellent, natural.
Mother's Garden. They are everywhere, but they are all so special. They are each unique. A haiku is a poem about nature that has 3 lines. The first has 5 syllables, the second has 7 syllables, and the third has 5 syllables.
Hello, my name is Michaela Riley. Today I will be showing how I do a shape poem. You're gonna do, can't see that. You're gonna do a list of words at the side of your paper. And you're basically doing this so you have the words that you want to do for your poem. You're gonna need a blank sheet of paper, no words on it, nothing. And you're gonna place it over the paper. And yeah. You probably can't see in the camera, but the flower pot from this page shows through the paper. So what you're gonna do afterwards is you're gonna look at your poem, and basically you're gonna start writing from the lines you see on here from the paper. So I'll show you. Okay, I'm gonna show you how you actually write down your words on the paper. So when you put your paper on top of the other paper, you see the dark lines of your shape. As you can see, I already have the outline of my handle from this picture. And this is what it looks like. It's just little flowers and waters, but you can see the words. So I'll be reading it now. Moving plants make me want to dance. Leveling the dirt makes a mess on my shirts. All these beautiful flowers, I can look at them for hours. Pretty colored tulips give me energy to do pull-ups. I look at my garden bed, some alive, some dead. Purple and yellow flowers scattered across the lawn. I wonder how they would look at dawn. Gardening is so peaceful, flowers are so graceful. Gardening for hours feels so successful. My name is Michaela Riley from Orchard STEM School. Thank you for watching how I do my shape poems, and I hope you learned well. Once again, I am Michaela Riley from Orchard STEM School, and yeah, bye-bye.
So now that we learned about some gardening, we learned some gardening hacks and also some crafts, like this little guy here who definitely needs a haircut today. I hope you learned something new. I hope you try a few of these, and thank you so much for listening today.
Good morning, boys and girls. Mr. Davis here on location. I am standing outside the Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine as inspiration for today's lesson and lab. Today we're going to be discussing genetics, and Case Western Reserve University is at the zenith of research and development when it comes to genetics. Now let's go see what we can find. Standing outside the School of Medicine, I just learned that it's closed. And even though we won't be able to go into this location, we could still use it for inspiration in today's lab. Let's go ahead and see what today's lesson and lab is all about. All right, boys and girls, welcome back to my office. I just want to review with you what we've done for the past 2 weeks. Our first week, we focused on physics. We looked at force, energy, and we created a capsule that would protect an egg during our egg drop lab. Last week, we dove into chemistry. We looked at electricity and how we put electricity to work, focusing on electrolysis during our lab. Now, I love to apply what I learned in school to real-world situations. And I learned about electrolysis a long time ago back in grade school, and then even more so in college. And as I was restoring an old vehicle a few summers ago, I remembered that electrolysis could be used to remove rust on old parts. And what we're going to do now is we're going to watch how that process works, not only to copper plate a coin like we did last week, but also help us restore old rusty equipment to like new so we could use it again. Okay, in order for our electrolysis process to work, we need a very large container, and within the large container we need some steel rebar. Now, we also have to create a solution, an electrolyte solution, using superwashing soda. Here's the first part that's going to be going into the solution and enduring the electrolysis process. Notice how greasy and grimy and rusty that intake manifold is. Now I've set up provisions to allow my negative lead to be attached to it. After submersing it in the washing soda and water and connecting both leads, the positive to the rebar and the negative to the intake manifold itself, and turning on our power source, look at the bubbles being created. Those are actually hydrogen bubbles. The electrons are moving from that intake manifold to the steel rebar in the solution, and with it, it's taking the grease and the rust and it's cleaning that part from all around it, inside, the outside, and I'm going to let this sit for about 24 hours. 24 hours later, the solution is full of grime and rust and is absolutely disgusting. Now, if you take a look at the top of the rebar, it's clean, but look where the rust was electroplated to it. It's actually stuck to the rebar itself. And that is your electroplating process. Now moving on to the intake manifold, it's drying in the sun, but check out what happens after this electrolysis process worked. Here's a before picture of the intake manifold and an after picture of the intake manifold. Now here's another part. Here's a cylinder head that came off the same engine, and this is after the electrolysis. Absolutely clean. Today we're going to be looking at the third leg of our science trio, and we're going to focus on biology. More so, we're going to focus on DNA. Our objectives today are to determine why DNA replication is important, prepare and conduct an experiment to extract DNA from an organism, and then lastly, justify how learning the process of DNA replication can help scientists come up with a way to help fight dangerous diseases. What are some characteristics of DNA? Well, first, it is the instructions for all cell processes. It is the building blocks and the instructions of the cell. It's like the blueprint. They can be copied each time a cell divides, and it's within every living organism. Every living organism has DNA. So the structure of DNA is pretty unique. It's a nucleic acid that is double-stranded, looks like a ladder, also known as a double helix, and it's made up of subunits called nucleotides, and those nucleotides are arranged in base pairs of adenine and thymine, and then guanine and cytosine. Now, Watson and Crick were the two scientists that made the first model of the double helix that looks like a twisted ladder. The sides of the ladder are alternating sugar and phosphate units, where you have those thymine and adenine and cytosine and guanines, and A's are always paired with T's, and C's are always paired with G's. You're going to get into this a little more when you get into high school chemistry and high school biology. All right, girls and boys, it's lab time. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go extract some DNA, and we're going to see what this DNA looks like all bunched together.
Hey girls and boys, welcome to today's lab. I know you're used to seeing me out in my shop, but for today's experiment, we need a place that's a little cleaner, a little better suited for what we're doing. That's why we're here in my kitchen. So today we're going to be using food as a part of our experiment, and what better place to be than the kitchen when we're preparing food. The food we're going to be using today is a strawberry, and in fact, we're going to be extracting DNA from the strawberry. Why is it important for strawberries to have DNA? You learned during the lecture that it's important for animals and humans and other organisms to have DNA, but why strawberries? So when you're doing this experiment, extracting the DNA from a strawberry, think about why it's important and why strawberries need it. Let's go ahead and begin. Okay. In today's strawberry DNA lab, you're going to need a few materials. You're going to need a strawberry, isopropyl alcohol, dish soap, salt, a Ziploc bag, a strainer, water, tweezers, a few glass containers, and a spoon. Now, if you've tried some of my other experiments at home, you might have found out that they have taken some time to complete. Today's experiment, however, shouldn't take that long. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to measure out your water, and in this case, a 1/3 cup. I already went ahead and I did that. After you have your water, what you're going to do is you're going to take your dish soap, which is 2 tablespoons, and you're going to put your dish soap into the water. This is where your spoon comes in handy so you can get as much of that dish soap out as you possibly can. Go ahead and place your dish soap container to the side. Now, with that being done, we need to add our salt. And in this case, we're going to be adding a 1/4 teaspoon, which isn't very much. Carefully measure it out. Make sure you're over the container just like you would if you were cooking, and add that to our solution. Now, we're going to give that a little bit of a stir. Make sure that salt and all that dish soap is nice and dissolved inside of this solution. Make sure you don't do it so fast that you get bubbles. You definitely don't want bubbles in our solution. All right, that looks good. We're going to go ahead and put that aside. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our Ziploc baggie, open it up, and we're going to place our strawberry inside. Then what we're going to do is we're going to remove this spoon, and we're going to take our solution we created and dump that inside the bag as well. Get as much as you possibly can in there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we get all the air, as much air as possible out, seal it up, and now we're going to mash the strawberry. So when you think you got that good and ready to go, you're going to take your strainer and you're going to make sure you pour all the contents through the strainer first. All right? What's the strainer doing? What's it helping minimize? These are all things you should be thinking about as you do your experiment. All right, go ahead and toss your bag out. All right, so our alcohol, our isopropyl alcohol, needs to be cold. I kept it in the freezer all night long. We need to measure out a teaspoon, which is what this is, of this isopropyl alcohol. If done correctly, this alcohol should be able to extract that DNA. Gonna give it a little stir. All right, after about a minute of letting the rubbing alcohol sit in our solution, if you notice, bring you down here, there is a layer on top, right there, of our mixture. And if you take your tweezers, you go in there, and you grab it, there is your strawberry DNA. Now, be careful. You could remove this, put it on a plate, and examine it. I left the experiment wondering some things. Why do strawberries need DNA in the first place, and where does the DNA come from in the cell? But we're going to take a look at DNA replication.
And the definition of DNA replication is the ability of DNA to make an exact copy or a new strand of DNA from an old one. And it does this in a very particular manner. So we first start with our DNA molecule right here. And then we have an enzyme called helicase, and it forces those bonds between your A's and your T's and your G's and your C's to break up or unzip, like a zipper on a jacket. As soon as that happens, there is another enzyme called primase that quickly attaches to one of these new sides on your DNA, and then you have another enzyme, your last enzyme, called DNA polymerase, building new matches and new strands. So from one strand of DNA, you now have two strands of DNA. What happens as a result of this is you get two identical DNA molecules. However, one half of the strand is old and one half of the strand is brand new. As these strands start to come together, they wind up very tightly just before this process occurs. And I believe we talked about this process before we went on spring break, and that is mitosis. So your DNA decides to wind up very tightly into these chromosomes at the end of interphase just before we get into prophase. Now, not only is this DNA replication important in mitosis, but is also very important in meiosis as well. Now, if you remember meiosis from last week's enrichment packet, and perhaps you talked about this before you went on spring break as well, is that it's like a double mitosis. However, some fancy things happen within meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. In meiosis 1, you have that DNA, those chromosomes, that are replicated. However, something fancy happens. You have these DNA strands and sequences that cross over. So when you duplicate your DNA and you have your homologous pair, during prophase 1 and metaphase 1, you have these chromosomes that break off different parts of their DNA and lock into a chromosome that originally didn't have it. Once meiosis 2 is over, you end up with 4 unique chromosomes. And this is fantastic for genetic variation, and one of the reasons why you don't look exactly like your mom and your dad. Finally, I want to talk about viral hijacking. Now, this is when a virus gets in your body, hijacks a host cell, and forces it to make new copies of itself. Well, our DNA replication happens in the nucleus, and it just so happens that these viruses, specifically in this instance, the coronavirus or a coronavirus, has recepting binders on the outside of its capsid here. And those actually match to a binder that is on the surface of the cell. And what happens is that virus then attaches to the cell and it injects its DNA. This DNA gets into the cell's nucleus, says, hey cell, we are no longer making new copies of yourself. You are going to make new copies of me. And what happens next is the virus reprograms our healthy cells into making new copies of itself. So many copies that once our cell, the factory of these new viruses, gets so full of them, the cell then lyses or explodes, and all these new viruses are then released into our body. Briefly knowing how the process of DNA replication works, where you have your two strands that are unzipped, and you build two new strands of DNA from that unzipped strand. And we have a brief understanding of how viruses hijack cells, where the virus attaches to the cell, injects its own DNA into the cell, forces the cell to make more copies of itself, and then the cell bursts. How might scientists use this information to potentially correct genetic disorders and help eradicate disease? Today we learned how DNA replicates through DNA replication and why it's important in mitosis for the repairing of cells, the repairing of your body, for healthy cells to help us grow, and in meiosis, where it allows for unique genetic variation in organisms. We discovered how to extract DNA from a strawberry, and we thought of ways that might molecularly help scientists fix genetic disorders and stop deadly infectious diseases. All right, you all have been great. Thank you for tuning in. We hope to see you soon. And remember, get outside and try some science and explore.
Hi, scholars. My name is Mrs. Rados, and today we're going to do a fun end-of-the-year activity. It's going to center around one of my favorite children's stories, Oh, the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss. I'm sure many of you have heard this before, but we're going to do something a little different with it today. We're going to read this story, and then we're going to take it and we're going to use it to reflect on our learning and growing experiences over this past year. Now, as we all know, we're learning right now a lot differently than we have in past years. This is new for all of us. We have had successes and we've had struggles. So we're going to think about our growth from the past year and what we have achieved. Because we don't just achieve things through what we succeed, we can also achieve through what we've learned with our struggles. So enjoy Oh, the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss.
Oh, the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss. Congratulations, today's your day. You're off to great places, you're off and away. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. You're on your own and you know what you know. And you are the guy who'll decide where to go. You look up and down streets, look them over with care. About some you will say, I don't choose to go there. With your head full of brains and your shoes full of feet, you're too smart to go down any not so good street. And you may not find any you'll want to go down. In that case, of course, you'll head straight out of town. It's opener there in the wide open air. Out there things can happen and frequently do to people as brainy and footsie as you. And when things start to happen, don't worry, don't stew. Just go right along, you'll start happening too. 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 Oh, the places you will go. Oh, the places you will go. You'll be on your way up. You'll be seeing great sights. You'll join the high flyers who soar to high heights. You won't lag behind because you'll have the speed. You'll pass the whole gang and you'll soon take the lead. Wherever you fly, you'll be best of the best. Wherever you go, you will top all the rest. Except when you don't, because sometimes you won't. I'm sorry to say, but sadly it's true. The bang-ups and hang-ups can happen to you. You can get all hang up in a prickly perch and your gang will fly on. You'll be left in a lurch. You'll come down from the lurch with an unpleasant bump, and the chances are then that you'll be in a slump. And when you're in a slump, you're not in for much fun. Unslumping yourself is not easily done. You will come to a place where the streets are not marked. Some windows are lighted, but mostly they're dark. A place you could sprain both your elbow and chin. Do you dare to stay out? Do you dare to go in? How much can you lose? How much can you win? And if you go in, should you turn left or right? Or right and 3/4? Or maybe not quite? Or go around back and sneak in from behind? Simple it's not, I'm afraid you will find. For a mind maker-upper to make up his mind. You can get so confused that you'll start into race down long wiggled roads at a breaknecking pace. And grind on for miles across weirdish wild space. Headed, I fear, toward a most useless place. The waiting place. For people just waiting. 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 Waiting for a train to go, or a bus to come, or a plane to go, or the mail to come, or the rain to go, or the phone to ring, or the snow to snow, or waiting around for a yes or a no, or waiting for their hair to grow. Everyone is just waiting. Waiting for the fish to bite, or waiting for wind to fly a kite, or waiting around for Friday night, or waiting perhaps for their Uncle Jake, or a pot to boil, or a bed or break, or a string of pearls, or a pair of pants, or a wig with curls, or another chance. Everyone is just waiting. No, that's not for you. Somehow you'll escape all that waiting and staying. You'll find the bright places where boom bands are playing. With banner flip flapping once more, you'll ride high, ready for anything under the sky. Ready because you're that kind of guy. Oh, the places you will go. Oh, the places you will go. There is fun to be done, there are points to be scored, there are games to be won, and the magical things you can do with that ball will make you the winningest winner of all. Fame, you'll be famous as famous can be, with the whole wide world watching you win on TV. Except when they don't, because sometimes they won't. I'm afraid that sometimes you'll play lonely games too. Games you can't win, cause they'll play against you all alone. Whether you like it or not, alone will be something. You'll be quite a lot. And when you're alone, there's a very good chance you'll meet things that scare you right out of your pants. There are some down the road between hither and yon that can scare you so much you won't want to go on. But on you will go though the weather be foul. On you will go though your enemies prowl. On you will go though the hack and cracks howl. Onward up many are frightened and creak, though your arms may get sore and your sneakers may leak. On and on you will hike, and I know you'll hike far and face up to your problems, whatever they are. You'll get mixed up, of course, as you already know. You'll get mixed up with many strange birds as you go. So be sure when you step with care and great tact. And remember that life's a great balancing act. Just never forget to be dexterous and deft, and never mix up your right foot with your left. And will you succeed? Yes, you will indeed. 98.75% guaranteed. Kid, you'll move mountains. So be your name Bucksbaum or Bixie or Bray or Mordecai, Alley, Van Allen, O'Shea. You're off to great places, today's your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way. All the places you will go. 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 For Kian, Maya, and Ramzi.
All right, scholars, now that we have read Oh, the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss, I have a few guiding questions that I'd like to go over with you.
Our first essential question comes from the story. You'll come to a place where the streets are not marked. When we read this quote, think about something you know is in your future. It could be high school, maybe a new grade, or right now, a new way of learning. Does it feel like an unfamiliar, possibly confusing place like in the book? And another question is of another quote from the story. I'm afraid that sometimes you'll play lonely games because you'll play against you. What does this statement mean? Why is it difficult to play games against yourself? And are these games that we play against ourselves helpful or are they harmful? And finally, today is your day. Your mountain is waiting. What mountain are you going to move? Are you going to find your success in life? Are you going to set a goal and reach for it? These are the things you should be thinking about as we go into our next activity.
Okay, scholars, now we're going to make our 3D dream balloon. The materials we're going to need is you're going to need 2 pieces of manila paper, white paper, construction paper. You can even do this with notebook paper if you have it. Any kind of paper would work, but you need 2 pieces. I went ahead and made a template to make it easier, which you can trace or draw. You need glue, scissors. If you don't have glue, you can always use tape. And you'll need markers or colored pencils. So let's go ahead and get going. We'll start once we have our template, and it's just a picture of a balloon. We will fold our paper in half. And then you can either trace or you can cut from the template. And the reason we fold our paper in half is that way as we're cutting, we will automatically have our 2 balloons, and they will be close to the same size. So that we can fold them and put them together, and they'll lay quite nicely. Scraps, and I will move my template here, and you will see I have 2 balloons. I will now take my next piece of manila paper. We will fold it, and we will do the same thing with this one. Now, once that has been done, we will have 4 of these balloons. You're going to take each one and carefully fold it in half. Now, once you have done that with all 4 of your cutouts, I'll show you here, I have 4 balloon sides that have been folded. Now, this is where you're going to take your tape or glue, and once one's folded, glue on one side, and you're going to take another one that's folded, and you're just going to take these 2 pieces here, and it's just these that get glued together. So you see it's glued together. Now you're going to take the next one, a little extra over here, and you're going to glue those together. And then for our last one, I'm going to glue this one together, and then you'll see how it kind of folds out, and then we're going to glue these 2 ends back to back together. So I have all this extra glue here. Just a little bit more. And we put these 2 together. And you'll see we have a 3D balloon. Now, what you're going to do with this is you're going to take it, and on each end of the balloon, using your markers or your colored pencils, you're going to write some things that we're going to talk about. So here I'm going to write goals achieved. I'm going to just make that nice. So on this balloon here, I'm going to talk about my goals that I achieved through the year. And over here, I'm going to write struggles. What were some of the struggles I had to overcome through this school year? And then as we turn our different sides of the balloon, you can see, I have a finished one here for you, that we have education, I have family, friends, successes, struggles, dreams, goals achieved. And here I have my future goals. And then you're going to be able to go and fill in some of this. And this is going to be a nice reminder for you as we go into the summer. So I will tell you something that I struggled with this school year is missing my students during this closure. And I'm sure this goes for every one of our teachers. We all missed our students, and I'm sure many of you miss your teachers, your schools, your classmates. What are some of the successes? Perhaps you achieved the grades you want. Maybe your grades were your success. Maybe you got into, if you're an 8th grader, you got into your high school choice. Maybe that was a success. So you're going to get to go through and fill in all of your future goals and everything about your 3D balloon. Have a great summer. Isn't this wonderful? I hope you enjoyed reading Oh, the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss and creating our dream balloon. And I hope you follow your dreams all summer long. And we can't wait to see you next year. Be safe, be healthy. Goodbye, scholars.